Welcome so much for joining this panel. We're really happy that you're here. My name is Jessica Chapman. I'm a staff attorney with the Animal Legal Defense Fund's Criminal Justice Program, and I really have the privilege and pleasure of getting to work with these three amazing people on stage. One will be joining us shortly, but they're definitely my very respected colleagues. I will first introduce Emma Clifford. Emma graduated from the University of Central England with a BA in honors in sociological research. Emma actively opposed blood sports and other forms of animal cruelty throughout university, forming animal protection associations. After graduating, she moved to the United States and joined the animal protection movement at a local, national, and international level. While at the San Francisco Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, she developed and directed the first citywide feral cat foster and sterilization program. She represented the SFSPCA at the Animal Welfare Commission, increasing the safety net for all animals in San Francisco. In 2003, she found out that the cats and dogs of the Galapagos Islands were being poisoned as a means of population control. In response, Emma founded Animal Balance in 2004, an NGO that creates humane animal management programs. Based on the successful model that she developed on the Galapagos Islands, she expanded globally due to demand and now serves over 12 island nations. Emma has directed over 70 high-volume spay-neuter clinics, created humane education programs, dog training programs, veterinarian technician training models for multiple languages and cultures. Our next speaker is Anlis Mercado Rios, and she obtained her Juris Doctor from the University of Puerto Rico School of Law and served as the spokesperson for the National Organization for Animal Rights in Puerto Rico from 2023 to 2024. Additionally, she completed a spring externship with the Animal Legal Defense Fund. Presently, Anlis is the new advisor of ONDA and a paralegal at Ayuda Legal Puerto Rico. She holds a bachelor's degree in human services for child, adult, and family services with minors in psychology and Latino studies from Iowa State University. Throughout her undergraduate studies, Anlis dedicated herself to working and supporting victims of domestic violence and immigrant families in the United States. Actively involved in rescuing and caring for community animals, she has cultivated a deep-seated commitment to animal welfare. Her activism extends beyond animal advocacy, encompassing a fervent defense of the rights of marginalized individuals and communities. And our third speaker, who will be joining us shortly, is Vivian González Méndez, who's a litigation lawyer who worked at the Department of Justice of Puerto Rico, where she litigated and supervised a team of nearly 100 lawyers in state, federal, and administrative civil litigation. She currently has her own practice specializing in governmental and animal law. She was a commissioner of the Special Commission on Animal Rights of the Bar Association of Puerto Rico. She is an animal cruelty investigator, founder of Justice Animal PR, an educational, legal, and activism project related to animal rights. She is also a professor at the University of Puerto Rico School of Law, where she teaches animal law and legal strategies for animal defense courses, civil litigation courses, and was the mentor for the National Organization for Animal Rights, ONDA, which is the one that Anlis now leads, whose members are law students advocating for animal rights and legal changes in favors of animals in Puerto Rico. And if there's a little bit, whoops, sorry, this thing is loud. I might be hurting everyone's ears. And if there's a little bit more time, I will go into a little bit of the work that we do specifically within ALDF, but I just want to give you a brief overview to create some context. So we're not going to be talking about all of the territories today, but the United States has created territories that are populated with governments through American Samoa, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We'll be talking about Puerto Rico and American Samoa today. ALDF, and through my work, I've had really been lucky to work with people and activists in different capacities on each of the territories. And when we have our conversations today, it's going to be really important to remember that each one of these territories has its own distinct history and histories and cultures, relationship to and within the United States. And so that means that all of the different relationships humans have with animals on these islands are going to be different. They'll have different needs. They have different resources available to them or lack thereof. And so when we work with activists and advocates throughout each territory. The response is really going to be based off of listening to what they need, what their needs are, the projects that they have, how they're able to improve their communities around them, and then being able to figure out what our resources can do to mold and fulfill the needs that they're looking for. So it's all very different, but there are some overarching commonalities. Spay and neuter, contraception is a really big one for everybody. And then also working to create the legislative infrastructure so that law enforcement and government officials have the ability to protect animals through the law, but then also going one step further and being able to ensure that law enforcement is actually working to use those laws to improve the system and protect those animals. So I'll go through more details if we have time, but for now, I'll give it to Emma, who will talk to us about American Samoa.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to the ALDF and the Lewis and Clark Law School for so kindly inviting me to represent American Samoa today as it pertains to the duality of governorship. First of all, clearly I'm not from American Samoa. I wanted to ask, is there anyone in the audience that is from American Samoa? No one. Has anyone been to American Samoa? Okay, that's where we start. So I will try to pronounce all the words correctly. Okay, thank you so much for joining us to learn about the territories of the United States, who are often in gray areas under federal and local laws. I will illustrate today how and why they need your assistance to navigate and foster positive changes in animal welfare laws in American Samoa. I'm the founder and the director of Animal Balance, and we are a 20-year-old NGO that creates humane animal management strategies with governments and NGOs internationally, focusing on islands and here in the United States in under-resourced areas. We deploy high-volume spay-neuter teams to create spay-neuter clinics and vaccine clinics with our local partners. Internationally, we're going to go for 1 to 2 weeks and sterilize maybe 300 to 400 animals. And here in the United States, we deploy for 3 days and we sterilize 200 animals over that weekend time. Slide 2. Okay, there we go. Yes, slide 2. So our mission is to collaborate with communities in need to create sustainable and humane non-human animal management programs to prevent suffering and ignite social change. We work on 12 different island nations, and now, as I said, also since the pandemic, we've now worked in 4 states in the United States. We do this within our ethical framework of collaboration, compassion, and coexistence. We are a vegan organization. I actually went vegan when I was 13, which we worked out last night was 40 years ago. Wow. On American Samoa, our partners in this amazing partnership is an organization, and forgive me if I say the words incorrectly, but you're not from there, so you won't know. Alofa Mo Maloha, which translates to love for animals. This is directed by Nick and Mona King. Nick is half American Samoan, and Mona is Caucasian and of no American Samoan blood. Mona, however, married Nick, who are landowners in the village of Paloa. This is important to know because dog ownership, which we will get to, is directly related to land ownership. We have worked in American Samoa since 2009 and inspired Nick and Mona to start this nonprofit to address the animal welfare issues, and particularly overpopulation of cats and dogs. Love for Animals was created in 2011 as the resident NGO American Samoan Humane Society Island Group had unfortunately dissolved. So they stepped up and joined forces with Animal Balance. And since then, we have been providing the appropriate resources. Nick is on the American Samoa Dog Force, and they create recommendations for animal welfare laws to the Lieutenant Governor. American Samoa is a 5-hour flight south of Honolulu. It currently costs around $2,000 return flight from Portland to get there. Only 2 flights a week access the island from the mainland of the United States, which makes it increasingly harder to do clinics there. However, the land size is similar to Washington, D.C. It is an unincorporated, unorganized territory of the United States. American Samoans cannot vote at the US Congress level. They are not automatically given citizenship in the United States and are considered US nationals. This makes it very challenging to make changes in federal, state, and local animal welfare legislation that would apply to American Samoa. In regards to Animal Balance's work on Samoa, historically, it has been very challenging for us to get accurate information from the US DEA as to how to legally transport controlled drugs, controlled substances to American Samoa to be able to do our clinics. And since the pandemic, NGOs now do not have the same export-import services from the USDA Division of Diversion Department. However, if there is a licensed DEA vet on the island, we can, in theory, therefore work with them. So it gets complicated. Okay, let's look at the convoluted power structure over in American Samoa. The Lieutenant Governor is voted in every 4 years. The Secretary of Interior oversees the American Samoan government and can approve constitutional amendments and can also actually override the Lieutenant Governor. Stay with me on this. The Secretary of the Interior appoints a Chief Justice and an Associate Justice. The High Court is led by the Chief of Justice, and under their guise, there are district and village councils. Villages are positioned about every 15 minutes by car along one road that circles the circumference of American Samoa 3/4 of the way round. The entire center of American Samoa is the most beautiful, incredible national park, which very few people have access to. The villages are managed by the village councils and family clans. When Animal Balance works in American Samoa, Love for Animals gets permission, asks for permission from the chief of each village. And once that's granted, we are allowed to set up temporary spay-neuter clinics inside of that village, normally at the Fale, which is the family guest house, which basically is a place where the village council meet. It is a structure with posts instead of walls. It is set up on high concrete blocks and has a beautiful, colorful roof. When we do village clinics, we spay and neuter the village dogs, and if we can, we will trap the strays and spay them also. Depending on your ancestral descent, land ownership falls into 3 categories: native, individual, and freehold. 90% of the land is native and under communal ownership. 2% is freehold to foreigners, and 8% is individual land, yet that individual land is still governed by the village chief. Land cannot be transferred to anyone who is under half Native American Samoan blood. Only full-blood American Samoans can receive transfer of land ownership. For example, Mona, who is no Samoan blood, but her children do, has rights to live on her land because she's married to Nick, and so her children give her permission to live on the land, as long as she's a law-abiding citizen. So this is important to understand as it relates to dog ownership. There are 3 categories of dog on American Samoa. There are village dogs, own dogs, and stray dogs. The clans or clans of each village own the land, therefore they own the dogs. And these dogs are called village dogs. These are dogs that don't have a particular home, are free roaming in that particular village, going house to house, looking for food and water and shelter. The chief has to agree to the clinics, as I said. And so once that formal request is presented and agreed upon, in our experience, the village chief then asks the muga, who are the young men of the village, to catch the dogs for us, to spay and neuter them. And as every single person in the village knows these dogs very well, this is a very gentle process. Then they bring the dogs to the Fale, where we go ahead and spay and neuter them. The people who have own dogs, they live on their own land. They cannot bring their dogs to these clinics. They are not allowed to come to the village clinics. People who have own dogs have to go to Pago, which is the main center, the main town, on their own free will, but they're not allowed to go to the village clinics. People who have these own dogs, they go to the, there's a Department of Health small clinic in Pago, where they can take those dogs. The stray dogs, however, these guys hang out next to small shops and restaurants, hoping for scraps, or at the park where there are picnic tables, hoping for more scraps for food. These dogs are in really poor shape. They have TVTs, they have other terrible medical issues happening to them, and they get shooed away from their villages and their own lands. They literally have nowhere else to go. But the Department of Agriculture, the good news is the Department of Agriculture gave up the control of the cat and dog work on the island over to the Department of Health. And that's a good thing for us, because now there are 15 staff who actually animal balance has trained over the years working at their clinic. And at their building, they now have 10 dog runs outside and 10 indoor holding runs and a small clinic. And they have an anesthesia machine, and they have packs, and they have other things that we've been able to take down. And they are currently utilizing a vet from Fiji, which everybody loves, because they much prefer to have an island vet who understands how to live on an island versus having someone come from the mainland and perhaps talk more about federal laws rather than local laws. So.
In the most remote places on the planet and in neighborhoods close to home, there are animals that lack access to basic care. Without it, they often suffer and are commonly treated as a nuisance or worse. But thanks to dedicated people from near and far, these services can be provided. Animal Balance uses existing resources and community engagement in a way that ignites social change and creates long-term impact. And it all starts with a MASH clinic.
We're setting up for our first afternoon in American Samoa. And so we're trying to think about what the flow is going to be for all the animals as they come in.
Mobile animal sterilization hospitals, or MASH clinics, are a simple and positive way to provide services to high-need areas. Based on military-style field hospitals, MASH vet clinics provide life-saving and life-improving care to high numbers of cats and dogs in a relatively short period of time. By creatively working together, staff and volunteers can transform almost any location into a fully functioning, high-quality spay-neuter clinic for cats and dogs. Animal Balance has developed a model that uses minimal resources for maximum impact. Supplies are carried in as needed, making the most of what's on the ground. Setup looks different in each location. MASH clinics require flexibility, but also adherence to basic standards. Each clinic uses the same critical thinking process and teamwork to ensure safety and efficiency in our surgery and recovery flow. In just a few hours, we can set up a fully functioning spay-neuter clinic that can safely move hundreds of animals through in a day. Volunteers can expect to work long days in potentially extreme conditions, including heat and rain. We often work in areas where the lack of resources extends beyond just veterinary care, like electricity, fresh water, or other clinic resources that we often take for granted. It's physically demanding, emotionally taxing, and very, very dirty.
Was it what you expected it would be? It was more fun than I expected.
But most volunteers will agree that the end result is well worth it. Participating in a MASH campaign may be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life. We work in some gorgeous locations, but it's not a tropical vacation. Getting there can take a long time across multiple modes of transportation. MASH is not for the faint of heart, but it provides a unique opportunity to see and help a community firsthand. We always make a point to engage people, as this is a crucial element to social change. A conversation, even with a language barrier, is the first step in breaking down walls.
So, they're getting fixed today?
And I have 3 dogs and 1 cat.
This includes children, who can often be found helping out around the clinics. Many of our youngest volunteers have grown up to become animal warriors in their communities. Our registration area demonstrates that the human-animal bond knows no boundaries of age, gender, race, or language. Everyone wants to provide a healthier life for their companion animals.
And Animal Balance is willing to come and help us. We really, really need that support.
Our commitment doesn't end when the MASH clinic closes. Animal Balance works to train local partners and veterinarians whenever appropriate, helping to ensure that there will be sustainable solutions once we've moved on.
You're not so bad when you're cleaned up, are you?
Animal Balance believes that through compassion and collaboration, we can achieve coexistence between all species on this planet. By working with communities both near and far, we can ignite social change and help improve the lives of animals one at a time.
Okay, so I have, oh, how do we stop that? Green button. Okay, there we go. Thank you. One more slide. So I wanted to share with you the objectives from the dog task force from Nick and Mona from American Samoa, because they've asked me to represent them today, and they've asked me to ask you for their help. First one, spay neuter to reduce the populations in the village. We're on it. Number two, population census. We've just done an incredible population census in the Galapagos Islands using iPhones and apps and having the village folks in the village actually count the dogs with us. And so that's worked really well. We'd like to do that on American Samoa next year. They would like to see humane education workshops that are culturally appropriate. Fourthly, they would like to educate legislators on American Samoa's laws and how they need urgent help to change them. And lastly, they would like your help to develop American Samoan laws for the whānau, and the whānau is the local term for government, to adopt into legislation and local law. They need your help for this part. Animal Balance and the other NGOs can help with the population control and census data collection. We cannot help change the laws. ALDF has been absolutely fantastic about helping. If there's anybody else that would like to step forth and help in American Samoa, we would really appreciate it. And this comes from Nick and Mona. So thank you very much for listening today. And that's my QR code if you'd like to get in touch. Thank you.
Oh, hi, my name is Anlis Mercado Rios, and I'm really deeply grateful for the opportunity to be here and talk about animal welfare in the territories and specifically in Puerto Rico. And so a little bit about me in this journey to understanding and talking and taking part in animal advocacy is that it all started with feeding a few stray cats in my community back in 2017, which turned into rescuing and partaking in TNR efforts. What began as a simple act of kindness quickly turned into a deeper realization, and it's that these animals weren't just neglected, they were actively suffering. They faced hunger, cruelty, and abuse. I felt compelled to do something, but it became clear that feeding them just wasn't enough. And so the problem was far bigger than I had imagined, and it was rooted in systemic issues that required legal solutions. So that realization is what drove me into law school, and I knew that true lasting protections for animals needed more than individual efforts. It needed laws that could properly be enforced. And during my time in law school, I was fortunate enough to take animal classes where I met Vivian, who has been a tremendous mentor to me. With her guidance, we were able to revitalize the Puerto Rico School of Law pro bono organization called National Organization for Animal Rights, or ONDA for short, which gave me the opportunity to work alongside animal advocates, do groundwork, and understand the bigger picture for animal welfare in Puerto Rico. And through ONDA, I also began to grasp not only the challenges facing abandoned animals, but also those faced by animals often forgotten in advocacy efforts, such as farm animals. So I was able to also elevate ONDA to a chapter with the ALDF, and around 20 law school students joined that first year. From there, I kept learning, educating myself, and looking at ways to be part of a better Puerto Rico that treats and protects animals as they deserve. And through all of this, I also had the privilege of getting involved and working in issues related to the housing crisis with one of the leading nonprofit organizations in Puerto Rico that work with housing disaster relief and tenant rights. And it was during this work that I began to see a deep connection between animal welfare and housing insecurity. And so today I stand before you not just as an advocate for animals, but as someone who has witnessed firsthand how these two crises are linked. And so Puerto Rico housing struggles and its legal framework play a crucial part in the welfare of animals. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Puerto Rico's unique legal framework, I think. There we go. Because this is key to addressing the challenges that Puerto Rico faces. And so Puerto Rico is a mixed legal system blending Spanish civil law, which is inherited during its century under colonial rule, and where the sovereign source of law is the written and codified statutes. So judges in this system basically primarily interpret and apply the law rather than create precedent. However, later in the 1898, after Puerto Rico was ceded to the US by the Spaniards, it introduced common law into Puerto Rican society. And so while many elements of our civil law system were retained, other areas blended to what is now known as a mixed legal system. So in turn, this mixed legal system came with the establishment of a Supreme Court in Puerto Rico styled after the US appellate courts. And so the concept of precedent or stare decisis was introduced, giving judges a more active role in shaping the law, similar to common law, and at the same time giving more weight to interpreting the written and codified statutes. So why is this all important? Basically, as a US territory, Puerto Rico operates drawing both from the local and federal laws. And so like Animal Welfare Act and its own civil and criminal code. So this dual influence provides also like a powerful opportunity to elevate animal welfare protections. So while there are laws like Law 154, which represent progress in Puerto Rico, and I'll get to that later on, animal welfare in Puerto Rico needs an interdisciplinary approach to tackle different subjects that often fall through the cracks of the system, such as the ongoing housing crisis. Puerto Rico's housing crisis is due to many factors that have worsened the abandonment and neglect of animals. So Law 154 from 2008 was enacted following a tragic and horrible situation in 2007, where residents of public housing in the coastal town of Vega Baja claimed their pets were seized and disappeared by the housing administration. Some of the personnel from the administration even opened doors from the apartments, and while the residents were away, extracted the animals from their homes. It was later found that the animals had been drugged and thrown off a bridge. So this situation shocked society so much so that it prompted the creation of Law 154 to better protect and prevent similar occurrences in the future. In today's world, animals in Puerto Rico are considered to be sentient beings. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, there are some laws that still contemplate these changes. So the now repealed reasonable renting law once offered crucial protections for renters, such as ensuring fair rent and requiring landlords to register rental properties. It was originally designed to offer affordable housing options because there was a crisis, a housing crisis, which it was one of the worst that Puerto Rico has ever seen. This was said back in 1946. Since its repeal, the renters have been left vulnerable, with tenant rights reduced to minimal protections under the civil code and some federal laws. Despite the fact that around 30% of Puerto Rico's population rents their homes, no legislation has replaced this law in nearly 3 decades. The lack of regulation allows landlords to impose unreasonable pet bans or charge excessive fees such as $100 per animal. The judicial process in Puerto Rico to evict tenants, it's done very quickly. The law gives way to a summary process for the judge to view the eviction cases, and in many cases, eviction hearings may last only up to 5 minutes. The entire legal process for an eviction, from filing to sentencing, takes about 30 days. Disturbingly, around 94% of tenants face this process without legal representation, making them be in an even more vulnerable position. For families with animals, this represents a compounded problem. The short time frame means finding animal-friendly housing becomes an even greater challenge, forcing difficult and often heartbreaking decisions. It is estimated that about 1 million cats and 300,000 dogs are roaming the streets of Puerto Rico as stray animals. In 2020, there was a change in the legal system. The Civil Code of Puerto Rico changed and reclassified animals as sentient beings, marking a significant shift in how animals are viewed. While it made a significant progress by recognizing domestic and domesticated animals as a distinct category from people or property, there is still much work to be done. The law protects these animals from being seized by third parties if lost or abandoned, and mandates proper care, custody, and treatment to ensure their well-being. However, the code falls short in addressing the rights of animals to proper housing or recognizing them as integral members of the family. According to recent studies, in Puerto Rico, nearly 2/3 of the population live with companion animals. Unfortunately, there is a lack of comprehensive data on how many rental properties allow pets or the challenges tenants face during trying to secure housing with their companion animals. Without this data, it's very difficult to fully understand the scope of the problem. And again, just lets us know that this is something that falls through the cracks of the legal system. So filling this gap is crucial to crafting policy that fairly balance the rights of landlords with the needs of tenants and their companion animals. So granted, Puerto Rico's housing crisis, worsened by also natural disasters such as hurricanes and earthquakes, has led to a spike in rental prices and made many properties uninhabitable. Low-income families, often who have pets, are disproportionately affected. And so just as an example, in 2023, there were about 2,528 evictions. The connection between animal rights and animal welfare extends beyond individual families. According to the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the right to adequate housing is considered the right to live in security, peace, and dignity. The right to adequate housing is not the same as just property. It's broader because it encompasses also including people that are not property owners, such as renters, to have a safe place to live in peace and dignity. In the Constitution of Puerto Rico, Section 20 granted that fundamental right to housing and not just property. However, this section was eliminated. So we're left with a few laws and a civil code to understand what rights truly cover for renters. But these laws sometimes don't communicate with each other and don't provide adequate protection for tenants with animals or give rights for animals to have a place in the family or a roof over their heads. Despite these legal gaps, Puerto Rico had a recent change in law reflecting a growing cultural awareness that animals are a part of the family. In 2022, the Supreme Court in Puerto Rico acknowledged pets as part of the family. And in this case, it demonstrated an evolving legal perspective where pets are increasingly viewed as integral members of households, not merely as property. But again, laws are not communicating with each other. And so there needs to be policymakers that actually attend to this issue. So what can be done to ensure multi-species families are not forced to choose between their homes and their families? I propose some reforms, such as reinstate or introduce a Rental Protection Act to strengthen tenant rights, including protection for tenants with animals, conduct comprehensive and intersectional studies on rental properties that better understand the extent of housing discrimination against multi-species families, create legislation for multi-species families to live in a secure and safe space, and also create outreach adoption programs with national connections to help the stray population in Puerto Rico to find their forever homes. These actions are not unique to Puerto Rico. They echo a global crisis that affects multi-species families across the world. There are biases and misunderstandings surrounding tenants with pets or companion animals, leading to unnecessary restrictions and evictions. So before I finish my presentation, I do want to address something else, is that I've only talked about just one piece of a larger puzzle. The intersectionality between issues like domestic abuse, stray and abandoned animals, the lack of TNR, and many other situations further complicates these challenges. So by advocating for a comprehensive legal reform to protect both humans and animal rights in a cohesive manner, we can ensure a future where all beings are respected and protected. So by fostering collaboration between animal advocates, housing rights activists, and legislators, and many other persons, we can create a more empathic society where both humans and animals can live together in dignity and respect. It is my hope that one day these challenges will be addressed in a more uniform way, and I honestly look forward to seeing that shift towards greater acceptance of animals as integral members of society, and that I have the honor of being part of creating that change. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vivian González Méndez. I am an animal activist and an animal law lawyer in Puerto Rico. This is a privilege to be here, and I'll be talking about Puerto Rico's active role in animal protection. In 2008, let me see if I can. In 2008, a new wave for animal protection started in my country, as I see it, driven mainly by animal advocates and nonprofits. I will share some legal advances, including legislation and court decisions that can be the path to achieve stronger animal rights and animal justice in my country. Let's see. Here? Oh, okay. Okay, but what happened before 2008? In 1930, a civil code was born, establishing that all animals were things and goods to be used as properties. No welfare provisions were included. In 1973, an anti-cruelty law was enacted with a limited scope of the animals protected and with minimal penalties. In 1984, in response of the overpopulation of stray animals, we have more than 1 million stray animals in Puerto Rico. This new law ordered Puerto Rico's health department to create 8 animal shelters to serve as adoption centers and low-cost sterilization clinics. None of these shelters have been created. But for us, the animal advocates, this legislation is important because it has the following public policy. It states that it is an act of cruelty to allow animals to be born and then take their lives by euthanizing them. In 1991, a law was enacted enabling municipalities to remove and destroy stray animals. In 1999, a law for the protection, conservation, and promotion of wildlife was enacted. It allows animal hunting and set penalties for the introduction of exotic species, which is another problem in Puerto Rico. And in the new century, the visibility of animal cruelty cases increased in Puerto Rico, and as a consequence, animal advocates raised their voices. Here are 2 examples. We have the case of Blackie, the dog Blackie. What happened to Blackie? He was beaten, burned, and forced to ingest acid by 2 adults and 2 minors. This resulted in severe burns and ulcers in the stomach and in his tongue. Criminal conviction was obtained. In 2007, a case that Anlis talked to you about, the Pets Massacre case. This case was in the international news. 80 pets were seized in a public housing complex by a municipality order and were thrown from a 50-feet bridge in Vega Baja, Puerto Rico. Most of the animals died. Criminal charges were filed, but it resulted in no conviction. This cruelty case, among others, created, in my perception, a new wave for animal protection that began in 2008. In that year, the Puerto Rico Welfare and Protection of Animals Act was born. I will be referring to this act as Law 154. Some key provisions in this law. It is an anti-cruelty and welfare law that recognizes, and this is very important for animal advocates, the need to align with international advances in animal welfare and rights. It establishes Puerto Rico's public policy, and this is also very important for us, to stand out as a sensitive and avant-garde society, which respects, protects, and cares for its animals, recognizes animals as living beings deserving fair and dignified treatment, has a broad definition of animals. You can see it there, but it is important for you to know that Law 154 does not exclude farm animals from this definition, although farm animals are the more ignored animals in our country. It stipulates for minimal care for animals by their guardians. That's a new term that the law has. Guardians are the ones, a person that has custody, possession, control, and title of an animal. It imposes severe penalty for animal cases. For example, we have felonies that have up to 15 years in prison. You can see the felonies in the materials and mentioned in the materials. Okay. It establishes as aggravating circumstances previous convictions of animal cruelty, domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, and committing animal cruelty in the immediate presence of a minor. It prohibits animal experimentation in schools. I don't know if in schools, and promotes the reduction of specimens used in scientific research, experimentation methods to alleviate or eliminate potential pain or discomfort for research subjects, and the replacement of animal experimentation with alternative methods whenever possible. This law assigns administrative duties to governmental bodies to assist nonprofits regarding animal protection and regarding the care of stray animals. Also, it's not in the slide, but it provides protective orders on behalf of animals, and cruelty is defined as any act or omission incurred by a person, whether guardian or not, that causes or puts an animal at risk of suffering harm to his or her health, to her or his physical and or emotional integrity. Okay, a year later, another cruelty case shook Puerto Rico. This was the Milagritos case. Milagritos, I don't know if she is alive today. Milagritos, the Mayor Milagritos, was beaten, tied to a cart, and dragged for 15 to 20 minutes. That's Milagritos after she was rescued. His abuser was charged with torture. He received a 12-year prison sentence, and that was upheld by a panel of 3 judges. I have here some of the expressions of the judges, and that I believe it's important for you to know. They said, this cause, meaning the prosecution of cruelty cases, serves to alert about the total repudiation of the legal system to any manifestation of abusive conduct, an environment of symbiosis and harmony among living beings is benefit for Puerto Rican society. Protecting and caring for animals projects us as a cutting-edge, sensitive, and mentally healthy country. After Milagrito's case, other criminal cases were filed in accordance to Law 154, but Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico in 2017, killing thousands of humans and animals. A year later, the Animal Shelters for Emergencies Act was born. It recognized that pets are considered part of the family, which is also good for us, for animal advocates, and orders the establishment of animal shelters for emergencies through collaborations between government and private entities in alignment with the Pets Act. That year, another important victory for animal advocates, an amendment to the Harmful Animals Act lifted a ban of possessing pit bulls. Many pit bulls were killed in Puerto Rico, pit bulls and dogs with pit bulls characteristics when the ban was enforced. So this is a very big victory for animal advocates in Puerto Rico. This is another victory. In 2020, a new municipal code was enacted. What's the importance? The importance is that now the municipalities have to remove, but have to care, not remove and destroy. In 2020, the municipal code that Anlis already talked about created two classifications of animals, domestic and domesticated animals. These animals are not goods and things, are beings, and they are not subject to appropriation by third parties or be subject to seizures. And the question that I am asking now in Puerto Rico is, can we still sell them? Establishes custody rights concerning human-animal relationships and establishes an economic contribution as a form of alimony for the animal. In 2022, an amendment to the Domestic Violence Prevention Act and Intervention Act was enacted. Now in Puerto Rico, it is a crime of domestic violence, the intimidation by creating fear and threat or mistreatment of a companion animal, the psychological violence through the mistreatment of a companion animal, and the torture and killing of a companion animal. Another case, Golfita's case, I'm going to be briefly, Golfita was killed by Salir Saveri while he was playing golf. He alleged that he was threatened by Golfita and that stray dogs were not protected by Law 154. Evidence during the trial, demonstrated that Golfita was only playing with his golf ball. He was convicted, and the importance of this decision was that the court ruled that stray animals are fully protected by Law 154. Those are the final moments of Golfita before being shot 3 times by Salir Saveri. The National Zoo case in 2023, a small dedicated group of animal advocates initiated a campaign to expose legal violations regarding the care of animals and requested the relocation of the animals. The petition was disregarded. The turning point came when these advocates used their constitutional right to access public information, requesting documents and detailed information concerning each animal and the zoo's operation, including the use of public resources and the use of public funds. This action uncovered irregularities in animal care, and fiscal management that led to investigations of the Puerto Rican and the United States Justice Departments. As a consequence, a federal settlement was reached to permanently close the zoo and relocate the animals to sanctuaries. No criminal charges were filed, but the permanent closing of the zoo was a huge achievement for animal advocates. We had in 2023 the case of Antonio Casillas that has that orchestrated 150 dog fights for 35 years. He was sentenced to 7 years, and it was a joint effort between state and federal agencies. In 2024, now we have a law that is ordering the Puerto Rico Secretary of Education to develop specialized programs for public school students about animal care, responsibility, and protection with a particular focus on 154. This is, we are now fighting for the cats that are in Paseo del Morro. These cats, the National Park Services is planning to eliminate these cats. They are vaccinated and sterilized by Save a Gato, and animal advocates have a petition online. I have a petition online for the state government and the municipal government to make a public declaration defending the cats and all what you're seeing there in the PowerPoint. Conclusion. Okay, we have a lot of challenges in Puerto Rico. We think that we have animal advocates that want to do the work. We need an urgent strategy to deal with the complexities of animal protection in Puerto Rico and for the recognition of animals as sentient beings with fundamental rights. Being part of the animal advocacy movement in Puerto Rico, I can state that this movement is growing. And I'm going to end with a phrase of my own that I will share with you that says, if there is no path in favor of animals, we must start walking and create one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would also like to give a special thank you to the Stray Dog Institute for sponsoring this event. We are going to have a panel with our discussions for a few minutes, and then we'll open up the conversation to the audience. So my first question, and this is going to be to each of you because you all have a different role. How, as an external activist going into different communities and also as activists being born into and part of the communities, when there is adversity towards animals or marginalized beings, how do you convince communities that may have other perspectives that protecting animals is important, using contraception, spay and neuter practices for animals is important in a way that still respects their own personal backgrounds and their own personal beliefs?
Oh, that's a very good question. We have to educate the communities. First, we have to acknowledge that there is an intersectionality between animal situations and the situations that the people have. For example, if we go to a poor community that is in need of any public assistance, and they have also animals, we will try to help them in all the ways that we can, not only focusing in the animal, but also focusing in the need that the person has. But I believe that education is good, and we have to go in a positive way. We cannot go in a negative way to these communities.
Also, I think an important aspect of it is that you have to be invited to the communities. You can't just go imposing yourself and your the mentality of it. You have to understand what community you're talking to and the background of the people and understanding their life situation. Because that is the way to be able to communicate to them in a language that they can understand. It's not only going in and putting your type of thinking, but it's also understanding what type of life, what type of upbringing they've had, so that you can better communicate what you want and for them to understand that an animal is just not something. It's a being. It's a part of the community, and so they also deserve to have good treatment, good food, water, and good conditions. So yeah, I think also a big part of it is educating people, not just only going into the community, but doing outreach programs in the schools and giving that opportunity for children to understand, to learn, and have that outreach in this education system.
Is this working? Oh, it is. Well, as an outsider, coming from England, going to American Samoa, and working in other places around the world too, because I'm always going to be an outsider, it's taking your time to be with people and create relationships and build trust. It's all about trust at the end of the day, and a lot of humor too. And so if you're working in a place where that isn't your own culture, which I do all the time, it's sitting and listening. It's sitting and understanding and being part of whatever is happening in front of you. I might not understand the language that's being spoken, but there's ways to convey peacefulness, love for all species, and in the way that you are with people means that their responses are not going to be negative to you. And then that opens up the chance to talk about cats and dogs literally everywhere when we're having our meetings. And so it's very almost easy to be able to hold a puppy, hold a kitten, and start talking about love for all species and about compassion, about family. And if you start talking about family, start talking about story, start asking about grandma, and then you go and have tea with grandma on Sunday or whatever it happens to be, it really makes those connections happen. And really, we couldn't do any of our work if we didn't sit and wait and just spend time with people and listen to the problems that people have in a compassionate and understanding way, without saying, do it this way, because this way's worked over there. Instead, say, well, what would you like to do? What's worked for you before? And what hasn't worked for you before? Well, we won't go down that path. What would you like to try? Which resources are missing to be able to do the path that you would like to follow? Let's go get those resources. But we're all coming from that base level of compassion and love for all species.
Thanks, Colin. Thank you. Awesome. This next question is for Anlis and Vivian. So Law 154 and many of the provisions, civil and criminal, that exist to protect animals, I would say are actually quite progressive, especially compared to state and federal law. But there are a lot of issues that you talked about regarding animals and their treatment. Do you have any insight that you would want to offer about the disparity between the progression and the progressiveness of the laws that have been passed, because they had to have been passed by people that supported them, versus the way that animals are treated in daily life?
Okay, we have good laws. We saw it. We have poor implementation. I think that Puerto Rico have a need of resources. We need resources. We have economic issues. And that translates in maybe in lack of trainings, in lack of more police members. For example, if I call for a cruelty case, maybe the policeman there, he's going to say, well, I'm here alone, I cannot go there. And that's a problem. And we have to, I know that we have good laws, but we have to educate these policemen, we have to educate the judges, we have to educate the prosecutors, but because there are deficiencies in that. And for me, the importance of having animal law lawyers in Puerto Rico, we are a very few. and active less than 5. We need to have a stronger movement, an organized movement of animal law lawyers in Puerto Rico to be able to help in the gaps regarding the implementation of the laws. But as you can see, we don't have bad laws. And I know we can do more, but it's complex, and we also need a multidisciplinary and multisectorial collaboration to do this.
I always say that in Puerto Rico, there's a crisis over a crisis over a crisis. And so that also plays a big role in what's happening, how situations are being looked at, how situations are worked at. And it's not only about the animals, but once you, as Vivian says, once you tie it all together, you see that it's a combination of things. And what's happening with animal issues is that there is a lack of expertise in this matter, and especially also like lawyers want to do the work. Lawyers in Puerto Rico want to process these cases and they want to help the animals, but sometimes the resources are not there. There's a lack of education, there's a lack of understanding of these issues and of the laws that apply to particular issues with animal welfare. And so this is not only, again, just a focal point, it has to be looked in a broader perspective, and there needs to be help, and there needs to be resources so that the issues can be worked at.
Emma, this question is for you. Since you do domestic and international work from the U.S. legal perspective, have you noticed that the U.S.'s framework with the territories and the legal system has created easier access to be able to help communities, become more complicated, especially with the territory and federal system compared to international legal frameworks?
It's much more complicated, absolutely, in short. It's interesting because American Samoa used to have a law school actually on site in American Samoa. And so we actually used to work with the law students. They would actually help us collect the animals for spaying and neutering and work with us at the clinics. So there was quite a presence of that kind of thought that was happening at that time about changing laws and legislations and making it safer for animals on American Samoa. Unfortunately, the school is not there any longer, and that is actually quite noticeable in terms of the conversations that are happening. What's happened is the dog force folks have come together after the pandemic. Of course, there wasn't a lot of spaying and neutering happening. So like everywhere else, the populations have grown. Now we're looking at dogs who are strays who are around 4 or 5 years of old, and they're not spayed or neutered. And so I think because that pressure is so intense right now all around the world, but particularly on islands, that supply chains were cut off during the pandemic. They didn't have anything. And so basically they're trying to rebuild right now. So those conversations are starting to happen at a local level. And what we're doing today, we were saying that we need those 5 things to happen. Those are just the tip of the iceberg. But if those 5 things can start to happen, we can then see changes happening through the structure in American Samoa, because there's lots of levels to what's happening. There's also the cultural level that's happening. And so I was telling you about Nick and Mona. It's really important that we're working with them, particularly Nick, because he's very high up in, I'll just say like the cultural elevation through life. And that's related to how many different kinds of tattoos that you have, which represents what level you are at within American Samoan culture. Well, Nick is good friends with and part of the same process as the Lieutenant Governor. So therefore, you have a direct connection to make those changes quite quickly right now on American Samoa. But it gets compounded when you're looking at the federal laws, because the dogs are not individually, they don't have individual guardians on American Samoa. So how do you apply that law? So it becomes very convoluted. So what ends up happening is very few people go there, and the FONO basically create their own laws to be able to work within the framework of the culture that exists, which is as having village dogs, not having pets that live in homes. So it's very, very different. So you cannot apply the federal laws to those situations.
Thank you. That's perfect. We're going to now open up the panel to questions from the audience. And if you are a virtual attendee, you can click on the Q&A icon and the question will be read to us. Go ahead.
Hi, I want to say thank you. I'm from Puerto Rico as well, so thank you for what you're doing. I have two quick questions. One, is there protection for pet owners with like emotional support animals, that kind of statute? And then second, how are these laws, anti-cruelty laws, affecting things like cockfighting?
Can you repeat the first question?
Yeah, so like here, as far as with the housing problems, there are protections for pet owners with emotional support animals and service animals, in which if somebody has an animal that is designated as an emotional support animal, then a landlord cannot evict them because of the animal, and they cannot impose fees because of that. So is there something, a protection like that in Puerto Rico, to protect pet owners?
Yeah, the service animals and emotional support animals are regulated by federal law. In Puerto Rico, there's not necessarily a specific law because it's already protected by federal law. So yes, service animals, people with service animals aren't supposed to get evicted. I've seen landlords try to evict them. But once you explain the federal laws and the protections that they have, they cannot be evicted. The problem in Puerto Rico that there is with only companion animals, since they really don't have regulation for that, what it talks about, like multi-species families. So there is that problem. But yes, there's the federal regulations for service animals. Yeah.
Okay, regarding cockfighting, that's a huge struggle for animal advocates in Puerto Rico. The cockfighting in Puerto Rico is prohibited by federal law. But the state government says that no, we can do the cockfights. And right now, cockfighting is in Puerto Rico, is practiced in Puerto Rico. And although I know that some animal advocates have requested the U.S. Department of Justice to intervene, nothing has happened. But there's a ban of cockfighting in Puerto Rico, and we are clear.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm asking you a question.
No, yeah, it's like last year I went to Caguas and there was a cockfighting place and it was open and the police were actually directing traffic, helping people park. And I asked and I said, is it still legal? And they said, no, it's illegal. It's like, but what's up?
In San Juan, Puerto Rico, that's the capital of Puerto Rico. If you go there, you will see a sculpture of cockfighting that cost more than $10,000 of public funds. Huh?
It cost $36,000.
36 on public funds. You know what can I do with $36,000 for animals in Puerto Rico?
Spay and neuter 36,000, right?
Yes. And it's a huge struggle in Puerto Rico. Yes.
Hello. Hi, my name is Gabriela Martinez, and I am a 3L with Pace Law. I was born in Puerto Rico, in Caguas. My family's Puerto Rican, so on an emotional, personal note, I'm so happy that you guys are here, and to see the representation of beautiful, intelligent Puerto Rican women in the animal law field is just amazing. So thank you guys so much for your time. So I was born in Caguas, which is like campo, which is basically another term for country. So my question is, I'm wondering if you could speak to any avenues that aid like that from Puerto Rico's new Emergency and Evacuation Act reaches the people and animals of El Campo, aid in terms of funds, supplies, or even enforcement mechanisms, since historically the aid usually hits the cities first and sometimes never even reaches the people like my family in El Campo. Thank you.
Okay. In my opinion, we have to work with the mayors. The mayors know the people and the necessities and the situations and can move funds and help. We have to go to the mayors. We have to make pressure to the mayors. But I know what you're talking. Imagine those municipalities that are in the center of the island, because Caguas is a major city, but we have other cities that are in the center of the island. And the perspective, if I might add, the perspective in the center of the island regarding animal protection is different than the perspective in San Juan City, for example. There are more cruelty cases in the center of the island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Toulon. It's like Mulan with the T. I go to school with Gabby, and so it's also really nice to have you here. My question to you is, in the case of Golfita, did the state sue on behalf of Golfita? Or, sorry, I lost my voice at karaoke last night. Did they sue on behalf of Golfita? Or, if they didn't, how did that work? I have a second, third, and fourth question that I'll go after, but that's the first one.
Okay, I work with the prosecutors in the case of Golfita. What happened with Golfita is that the Department of Justice filed criminal charges. We don't have in Puerto Rico an independent private action to file for animals. We're going to fight for that in the future, but we don't have that. Golfita was a stray dog. And in that case, we feel that they gave 3 years of, well, it was not jail, it was
Restriction, domiciliary restriction.
domiciliary restriction. I don't know if I'm answering the question. That particular case was in the news and in the international news. And I think that was because of the person that killed Golfita, this millionaire that was in Puerto Rico, Salir Saveri. So, but no, only criminal charges were filed.
Thank you. Yeah, I ask because I know in the Philippines, they were able to sue on behalf of the marine mammals there. And I was wondering maybe if you can establish something similar since there is guardianship for animals in Puerto Rico. So it's very similar, but I'll.
We want to implement this program. We want students from the School of Law. We are both from the University of Puerto Rico School of Law, and we want the students to be in the courts like a guardian in those cases. No, we have right now the case of Luna. Luna was beaten like 6 minutes by his guardian, and nobody was there for Luna because the guardian was incarcerated. So, but we are going to move forward. I know we're going to move forward in Puerto Rico.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question, but I do hope the conversation happens after the panel, so please go ahead.
And it's a brief one. Did I see correctly that DEA, the Department of the Drug Enforcement Agency, licensed veterinarians in American Samoa, or is DEA something else?
Okay, so to be able to take the controlled substances that we need to be able to do the surgeries, we obviously, before the pandemic, we would have to apply to the US DEA Department of Diversion as humanitarian aid project. And we'd have to state why we were going there. And then they would give us permission to take controlled substances from mainland to American Samoa. But it was always questioned as to whether it was necessary or not because it's American Samoa. So did we need it? Didn't we need it? Well, we were slightly terrified. So we actually got it anyway, just to be completely, want to take care of our veterinarians, just to be really sure that we were complying with the law. But when we asked originally in 2009, they're like, no, you don't need it. Come on in. And we're like, no, we're going to get the paperwork. So just to be sure, but nobody could be clear from the USDA back then to say yes or no. And so it depended on who you asked, which is very strange for the USDA. But now it doesn't apply at all because now we can't do it. So does that answer it?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
thank
good.
you.
Thank you all so much for attending, and thank you so much, Vivian, Annalise, and Emma, for being here. It really is a pleasure and an honor. This concludes the 32nd Annual Animal Law Conference. I can't believe it's already passed.